Thank you, Angela, for being here today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the gardens?
It's lovely to be here. Thank you. I became involved with the gardens about almost 20 years ago and have never regretted it. Nehrling Gardens is a remarkable historic site, the former home of Dr. Henry Nehrling, who is considered one of the fathers of Florida horticulture. Of course, he died in 1929, but his legacy is so worth preserving. And I became involved when I first moved to Orlando, to Windermere, and was sort of introduced to the gardens. At the time they were overgrown, people were trying to save them, and I thought this is a fantastic thing.
What inspired you personally to get involved with the gardens?
I've always loved history and gardens and the environment. I actually grew up in Australia, in the outback of Australia, very arid conditions. Florida is quite different and absolutely magical. And here was a project that had the history, it had the gardens, and it had the concern for the environment and the potential for education, and I was hooked.
The gardens have a rich history. They're dating back to the 1800s. How has the gardens adapted to the changing times, and how has it maintained its relevance today?
It's interesting that when we were able to buy the gardens, our nonprofit was formed in early 2000 and struggled for almost 10 years to be able to buy it. But over the years, it had been neglected. The owner had not been able to take care of it, the more recent owner. And that turned out to be a good thing, because instead of seeing it as a place to make it all perfect, we understood that so much that was already there had great value. It had shown that it had survived for that long. And so we rethought our approach to what we wanted to do, and we've made it something more of an exploration garden and valuing what has survived, as well as the opportunity to replace the things that we know are important. So that was a learning experience. It's no longer somewhere where we experiment with plants, but we move forward with the things that we know work well.
So the gardens have a strong focus on horticultural
Mhm.
education. Can you share some insights into the types of classes and programs that you provide?
Thank you. Yes, we very much are an education center. We want to be a place that people learn what we really should be doing with our gardens in Florida and with our lake shores. So we offer classes on things like culture and care of amaryllis and caladiums, which are one of our favorite things we grow there. We offer classes on birds, because Dr. Nehrling was also a fabulous ornithologist, and what we do in our gardens is make habitat for birds and for wildlife. And then we offer some lovely classes for children, like insects in your garden and tree talking. These we offer on request. We set up special classes. And some we have other teachers come in and offer classes as well on special topics. It's always available on our website, anything that we're doing.
Community involvement is key to the success of the gardens. How do you keep parents and children involved in participating?
Oh, thank you for asking about the community involvement, because that's really what we are. We're an almost entirely volunteer-run organization, and we have managed so far with community support in all sorts of ways. We don't get any government funding, other than one matching grant we got from the historic preservation, the state preservation, to help restore some of the building. Other than that, it's been collaboration with businesses in the community who helped when we've done work on the gardens. We have a tremendous number of volunteers, wonderful people who come in and help weed and plant and maintain the gardens. Others who help us with things like our archives and data entry, our computer work, is mostly done by volunteers. We have one fabulous part-time administrative coordinator, and she keeps us all organized. But beyond that, it's community volunteers. And we welcome people. All you have to do is reach out to us through the website or show up at one of our open days and say, I'd like to be involved, and we will be very grateful.
Native plantings and environmental conservation are essential components of the gardens. What are some specific benefits of using native plants in landscaping, and how does it contribute to environmental stewardship?
It's interesting, I think, how all of the gardening community is beginning to recognize the importance of native plants in what we do in our gardens. There have been some wonderful books written recently pointing out that if we went back in all of our suburban gardens, went back to more use of native plants, less of the acres of lawns and the palm tree concept, and really planting things that provide habitat. You find that most native plants require less fertilization, less use of pesticides and herbicides, less water. And all of those are critical to maintaining our environment. And so we want to be a place that teaches that, where you can walk around and see, look, can be beautiful and sustainable. It's not that there isn't a place still for some of our wonderful imported specimens that have proved to do well without becoming invasive, but we need to be doing much more with our natives. And then we get the birds and we get the fabulous pollinators that are so critical. You know, we're losing pollinators, and they are critical to the survival of all of our nature. So if we can be bringing this back and reducing our dependence on water and putting pesticides and herbicides into the environment, then that is the best thing we can be doing. And we can do it as homeowners. You know, you can talk about grand ideas, but in our very own backyard and front yard, we can be doing this. And hopefully homeowners associations are coming around to recognizing this is important too. And I think Florida is looking forward in that regard. I hope to see more of this.
Can you share a success story or an impactful project that the Gardens has undertaken to promote community connections and sustainable landscapes?
That's sort of a hard one to answer, because in so many different things that we do, whenever we have our plant sales, where we actually, for donations, have plants that we've propagated from what's in the garden, so people know this will work in my garden. It grows here, I can see it, and very often not available in the big box stores. That gets people thinking differently about their gardens. When we do some of our events, like our Holiday Amaryllis Festival every year, that brings families from all around the community, and when they get to have activities with the children on bugs and critters and birds, and we have the birds from the Avian Reconditioning Centre bring their birds of prey. And when they're there, sometimes you can also hear our owls hooting in the background. And it becomes this changing an experience where you're there and you see how things could be different if you rethought your own home and your own garden, and you see kids light up when they start seeing the lizards running around and seeing the birds and the fascinating plants that we have, not just the orderly rows of petunias kind of thing.
What do you envision for the future development and its role in community?
We are so excited at the direction things are taking at the gardens. For a long time, it was a struggle to get people to even recognize that this was something worth saving, because it was very overgrown when our nonprofit acquired it at the end of 2009. The previous owner hadn't been able to maintain it. She was an older woman, but she wanted it protected and saved. But many people looked at it and said, it's just an overgrown mess. What are you going to do? Gradually, over the last 10 years, the community began to understand that it really was worth saving. It took some cleaning up before they could envision it. Now that has proved really changing a whole change in the approach of the community, because they can now see what we saw originally. And as a result of our efforts, we've received a major grant from the Foundation for a Healthier West Orange that is allowing us to do significant improvements to the property, to the facilities, to accessible paths and accessibility improvements, so that for the future we are going to be able to do more classes. We're going to be able to bring people, for example, from nursing homes who don't find it as easy to get around but so need to be brought out into nature. Special classes for children, for special needs children. We will be able to do this with these improved facilities. So not only will be a lovely place to come and visit, but we can be offering tremendous benefit to particular segments of the community that possibly don't have that opportunity at the moment.
We mentioned in the beginning that the garden had been around since the 1800s, has a long history. How do you balance preserving some of that history with embracing some of the modern sustainable practices?
That is always an interesting balance, and we find ourselves struggling with that sometimes, knowing that some of the practices from that time period we've learned really aren't the best thing. It's not so much in the growing of things, but we have to be very careful about what we import and grow. And at that time, when Dr. Nehrling was experimenting with plants, he was bringing things from all over the world. Some of them he quickly realized were not a good idea, and he wrote clearly about that. Since that time, we've said it turns out some of these plants have done well and are not a problem, and we continue to use those. But he also was a great fan of native plants. And so our focus has been to move forward with the use more of the native, appropriate natives. They can complement some of the imported plants. That doesn't mean we have to get rid of those, but our focus now is bringing in more of those. And the property has changed somewhat over the last series of hurricanes we've had. It used to have a lot more shade. So we're experimenting again with some of the natives and how that goes. But we are no longer developing and hybridizing plants. We are focusing on moving forward with more teaching, utilizing, bringing people back to an understanding of what we can do in our Florida landscapes. And we're a great example where you can come and see what works and how lovely it can be.
You have a charming 1880s Florida wood frame home and other historical elements. How do you leverage these historical features to enhance the visitor's experience and educational programs?
One of the things that we believe is really special about Nehrling Gardens is the fact that it's such an immersive experience when you come there. So when you can sit on the porch that Dr. Nehrling sat on, looking out at his wonderful garden down to the lake, you have a sense of why he loved this place and why he was passionate about it. So that becomes very much a part of the experience as you see the old home. This is where the man lived. With his family, his remarkable family that he brought down from a nice middle-class lifestyle up in Wisconsin. So that is very important to us. A few years ago, we were able to get a grant from the state for some restoration work on the historic house. It was a matching grant, and we were able to get off the old lead-based paint and repaint it. We were able to use that in teaching people, this is what you can do with your older buildings. We don't need to be tearing things down. This is how you can restore them. You can also see with the building how it was originally moved there in the 1901 when Dr. Nehrling decided to move his family. He got this old rundown house that had been abandoned in Gotha. They cut it in sections, put it on ox carts, and brought it to the current site and rebuilt it and added the wing that's now the dining wing that's now our office. So we were able to show people this is how it was done. This is what you did then. It was ox carts. You got it here in pieces and then you put it back together. There is so much we can learn from the way people did that, and they utilized wood from other old abandoned houses for you can see under the porches. So that's important. There is an old greenhouse from the Nally era on the property. It's had all its glass removed. We're still working on how best to deal with that, but that's fascinating for people to see what was done in the 50s and 60s. With these older style of greenhouses. So the history is a really critical component of the property, and that's why our historic designation is on the work that was done there, the man who lived here and the work that was done here on this site. It's very special.
Can you tell us how people can stay in touch and get involved?
We would love to have people involved. Our website is a great resource, and on there you'll be able to find ways to contact us. You can always just send us an email and say, look, I'm interested, or I'd like to bring a group for a tour. We'll do tours, special tours, or you can just come show up on our open days. We'll have more open days as we go forward over the next couple of years as we get more staffing, but you can find out on the website anytime.
I'm going to ask you some true false questions regarding the legacy of the gardens.
Okay.
Question 1, and our viewers can also play along, see if they get these answers right. Dr. Henry Nehrling purchased 65 acres in the German American town of Gotha, Florida between 1885 and 1896 to establish one of Florida's first tropical gardens. True or false?
True.
Nehrling's garden was named Palm Cottage Gardens, and it quickly gained popularity as a tourist destination. True or false?
True.
In the early 1900s, Nehrling Gardens became one of Florida's first USDA horticultural experimental stations where Dr. Nehrling tested over 3,000 plants. True or false?
True.
Nehrling Gardens specialized in growing sun-loving plants such as caladiums, Palms, bamboos, and magnolias, and acres of lath shade houses. True or false?
The first bit isn't quite correct because those are not sun-loving plants. Caladiums are shade-loving plants, hence the lath shade houses. So I can't, yes, that's not quite
So
true.
it's false.
Yes,
After Dr. Nehrling's death in 1929, the garden remained vibrant and active under the care of Julian Nally and his wife Maggie. True or false?
true.
In 1999, the Henry Nehrling Society was formed to save the property, and it succeeded in purchasing and preserving the home and gardens. True or false?
True.
Nehrling Gardens is primarily focused on commercializing various species of orchids and gloriosa lilies. True or false?
False. We don't commercially propagate.
And that was the last question.
Okay, all right.
Well, thank you so much. I can't wait to go and check out
Well,
the
your
garden.
team really did their homework, and I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
That's fantastic. So thank you very much.
Thank you. If you're enjoying this show, please subscribe to our channel and follow our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter accounts.